Welcome to the second video of our Setting Up a Hand Tool Shop series. We're taking you through the workshop, showing you different aspects. In the last video, Mike showed you the shop as a whole, the building itself, the 26 by 24 foot building. And this video, I want to look at three different workbenches that we use all the time. And the first one is our main bench. Actually, we have two. If you remember from the last video, we have one here and one opposite. So we have two identical 12-foot long benches. That's a lot of lineal feet, and it's awesome to have that. So we feel a little spoiled, but it's really useful when you're making things to be able to have that much lineal footage. This bench is an English joiner's style bench. It's made out of softwood, and you'll see there's the top across here and the apron, or it's called the sideboard historically. The sideboard right up front. So it's not this thick. If you come around here, you can see it's just a front little apron. So you can set the material up against here and have it 90 degrees. But it also, in addition to having a clamping surface, it provides a lot of rigidity. So when you come down this way and you're hitting, there's a lot of width that's resisting that. So if I just had this top of my workbench that was 3 inches thick, say, it's still going to be bouncing a lot. But this vertical board really resists that. So it's also great because not only does it provide that sort of downward resistance, but you'll see right here we have the legs, and see this little notch? The sideboard, or this front board, is notched into this. It's locked in. So, and then we nailed it through here. So this is glued and nailed. So this also helps with a lot of racking. You'll see in another bench I have little braces here, and that helps a lot. But we found on this bench, it is so rugged with this much surface area that to have the legs coming up and the sideboard and the top, it's all locked together in such a rugged, rigid way that we never have any problems with racking. So that's another benefit to this. If you have the French style bench with the thick top and the legs coming up, you're going to have to make that thing really solid, really heavy, big timbers to be able to resist racking. This just has the design built in, even though it's just softwood and nothing particularly thick. So the top here is 2 inches thick, pine, not hardwood at all. My thinking about the workbench material is you can use all sorts of things, but I like softwood because if I'm gonna have something get dented accidentally, I'd rather have it be my workbench than the work piece I'm working on, right? So if I'm working in pine and I have a hardwood bench top, I'd rather have the bench top sacrificed. So that applies to all sorts of projects you're working on. We're working on pine boxes right now, but I just find that to be a really great principle. Also, it's inexpensive and available. But you can see I'm not precious about my bench top. When it gets too chewed up, I just plane it flush. Just give it a new surface. So that's the idea with that. I use a toothing plane, which is a horizontal iron, and it has these little teeth. And this is not a toothing plane, but I'll use that, and it just scratches up the surface. So you could almost, in the past, I've used like an old piece of saw plate with teeth and just scraping across there. And that makes a crosshatch pattern, and it really helps with grip. So this is not like one of those bowling alley benches that are all polished and smooth and slick. That's the exact opposite of what I want. I want grip. I want grit. I want my board not sliding away from me. So that's what I'm looking for. Also, you'll see here in terms of holding, I don't have a tail vise, and I do have a planing stop, and I have a vise. Now, the way we've set up these benches, they're 12 feet long, but functionally, we have them as 2 6-foot increments. So this is a workstation, and this is a workstation. Now, if I want, I can use the whole length, but in real life, I'm almost never needing 12 feet of length to plane a board. That's a really long board that you should probably be cross-cutting to length first. So if I do need that for whatever reason, let's say I have 8 or 9 feet I want to plane, I can remove this planing stop. It's just mortised in, and I can tap it up and out and take it out, and then I can put my long board right on here and use the long end. So I can plane boards that are 10, 11 feet long, no problem. But I can't think of a time I've ever really felt that it was important. Let me show you two things here with the holding. The one is this planing stop. It's called a bench hook historically. People today call these things bench hooks. That you put the stock in to saw, and that's fine. I don't know what else you'd call it. Nicholson calls them side rests, but this historically has always been called a bench hook. It's a piece of metal that comes up. It's a little hook with teeth, and then you slide the board up to it. I'll come around here. You slide the board up to it, and then you can plane that way. So it's resisting all your pressure. And what's great about that is you can plane, pick it up, flip it, plane, flip it, pick it up and check. And this is so much faster than messing around with the tail vise. And as long as you're planing this direction, it's never going to be slipping anywhere. So I'm really in love with having a bench hook. The other thing that I find to be useful is for stuff like this. Let's say I want to be able to scribe a line and I had a longer board. I can butt up against it and use a stop to slide. I often am using my body to hold a lot of things. So I'm putting something up here and sliding that way, flipping, sliding. And that's useful when you have something 4 feet long. I can butt that against there and slide the whole way, right? So for me, what I'm trying to do is work free. I'm trying to work without constraining vices that are locking my board down. Because the more it's locked in, the more time I'm spending unlocking, adjusting, tightening, taking a pass, unlocking, checking. I don't have time for that. So for me, I like a free workbench, totally open. So I have the planing stop with a bench hook, and I have a vise. The vise is a simple English style vise with a single jaw here with a single screw, and it's got this guide post. So if you can see that here, I have a single guide post, and then this locks in this way. So it comes in pretty equal. Now, because of this, it's not a double screw, so there's a little bit of racking, but it's not a problem in use. Some people worry about racking, and it's functionally not a problem, especially when you're near the screw. But if you come over here, here's another style of vise. This is called a leg vise because this vise is attached to the leg itself. The other one's just in the middle of the side rail, but this one's right into the leg. And this one functions on the same principle, but it's basically, if you think of it, as just flipped. Instead of it being horizontal, it's flipped down this way. And it has a pin, a wooden pin that I can adjust the depth I want. And then once I put this board in, I'm able to tighten it down here, nice and tight up against it. So that's relying on the leg to pull it. Whereas in this other vise, it's relying on the side board, that front horizontal board, or vertical board rather. I think lastly over here, I'll show you for work holding. I think Mike showed this in the last video, but we have this this planing stop. It's not really a bench hook. It's just a piece of pine that we screwed to the top. That's it. It's just a stop to do the same thing that the bench hook does. But it's disposable. It'll get beat up. We just chuck it and find another piece of scrap. There you go. There's the start for your new planing stop, right? So it's cheap. You can modify it infinitely. You can plane it down thinner. The other planing stop, I can adjust it up and down, but I've never ever raised it up above an inch because I just don't need to. It's pinching the stock. Even that big stock here, 3-inch thick stock, I only need to hold the bottom. Once it's locked in, it's locked in. So I can adjust it higher if I want. I just don't think it's necessary. And some people ask about, they'll get worried about these teeth, these sharp teeth sticking out. and they'll say, don't you want to mortise that down into the bench? And so some people will scribe around that and cut a little slot so that they can, when they're done using it or in between uses, they can send that down deeper to bury it flush with the surface. And I just find that not necessary at all. And also this block is friction fit. So the more times it goes up and down and up and up and down, it's just wearing that, and it's going to be sloppier. So I like a nice tight fit. I don't do a lot of adjusting. It basically always stays here, which is, I don't know, it's about 1/2 inch, a little less than 1/2 inch. And I very, very rarely adjust it just a little 1/4 inch up or down. I almost never really mess with it. So I think I think people are overthinking it. They're just thinking too hard about it and wanting to have too many variations. But I like it fixed and not moving. A couple other things with this. You'll see that the depth here, we thought a lot about if we're going to be traversing, planing across a board, right? Let's say we have this way, I have a wide board and I'm planing this way. You want to be thinking about how far your reach is. And so for us, I don't remember, I think it's 27 inches from here to the back so that my plane would hit at that point. But it really doesn't matter because it depends on what plane you're using. So the way you could just test it out, and this is what we did, we said, okay, if we were planing, how far am I going to be extending? Because you do not want to hit the wall. The benefit of having the bench against the wall, as Mike told you, is the light coming in, but you don't want to be hitting the wall when you're planing if you're going across. So think about that. I think ours is 27 inches, but check on your own stroke, your own situation. And in terms of if you're thinking about how deep it is, you don't have to have the entire top the same thickness the whole way across. Because never am I back here planing, right? This area back here is never for chopping back over here or planing. You do all that stuff right here within the first foot or so, right? So our board, I think this is 13 inches or close to it. So really only the first 13 inches needs to be thick enough for chopping. The rest of it is just a 1-inch board. It just holds stuff. It's just where I set extra material. So I've seen that on historic benches. Peter Nicholson talks about that when he talks about making this bench, that 19th century book describing it. He says the backboard, that can just be 1 inch, doesn't matter. So those are all important principles because you can get 1-inch pine boards all over the place. So that's this primary bench. Oh yeah, I'll show you. So the last thing with this bench is the workbench height. Some people, they want it really tall because they have bad backs and they want to be able to work up, up high, closer. One thing I'll do is I'll drop down low if I need to chop closely. That's pretty comfortable. You could have a chair if you wanted. But for me, this height is really important. And you'll see the way I'm standing normal, this is about 1 inch taller than where my pinky meets my knuckle is. And so this is about 1 inch taller than where I would ideally put it. But we wanted this to be comfortable for all sorts of people coming into our shop. But there is one test that Mike and I thought of for determining the exact height for your workbench. Or rather, if you have a bench and it's too tall, this is the way you can test if it's too tall. What you want to do is you want to clear the workbench and all of your special projects out of the way. You want to clear everything in front, okay? And then you stand like this. You stand about maybe 18 inches in front of it. Hike up your pants. So that's 1 inch too tall. What's that called? A box jump? A box jump. So that's one way to test, if your bench is too high. But another bench you might want to look at is this low bench. This is our saw bench. You can see it's about knee height. It's actually a little lower than that. And this is great for two things primarily. I use this a lot for if you could do cross cutting like this at this height, Or with this ripsaw, you can have a 10-foot long bench and do all sorts of ripping. And you're not dealing with, having two little saw benches that are flopping and that kind of thing. So for me, I don't have two saw benches. I have one awesome, 5 feet long, 5-foot saw bench. So this is super useful. The other thing I use it for is if I'm chopping mortises, I do that at this bench. And so I'll sit right on the leg that I'm chopping, my mortise chisel and my mallet, and I'm going to chop like that. And that has all the downward pressure. I do it near the legs, so that all the pressure transfers down to the ground. And I'm chopping like this. And that means I'm right up on top over the mortise. I can see down into it. Otherwise, you can imagine over here, if I was trying to do that, a lot of people will chop up high, and they're trying to lean over it and see it. And they're leaning up on top of the bench to get that, to sight it, to make sure it's 90 degrees. With this, you're already on top of it. And it's just so much more efficient to be down right over it. So I highly recommend chopping mortises on a low bench. Lastly, I'll show you our travel bench. This is a 6-foot version of the 12-foot bench that I built. This I designed to be built, to be set up quickly at shows. So when we go to Lee Nielsen or Woodworking in America or something like that, we will be able to take this one, pack it down, and the whole idea is it's as quick as possible, zip it apart, throw it in the van, and we can leave. So it's assembled with the Starbit Torque screws, screw gun right apart. So it's right in the front here, right in the front back over here. The vise comes out, the entire top pops off. And so we have everything stacked, and these legs are in a single unit. So these two legs and the stretchers down here up top, that's a unit of 2 legs. This is a unit of 2 legs. And then we have these boards underneath, which there's a storage board underneath these benches as well, the long ones. It's really, really useful to have storage underneath your bench right at hand. So you'll see, because this one's designed to be for traveling, it's not as rugged as that one is. And so I have these diagonal braces that are from here, and they're screwed into this. It takes us, I don't know, less than 5 minutes to put this thing together with the screw gun, because everything's marked A, B, B. Zip it all apart really quick. And once you do that, especially with the diagonals, it's quite rugged. So this bench is really good for that as well. There are all sorts of benches you can use, but for us, we like it to be expendable, so we're not investing a bunch of energy into exotic woods and something crazy. But also, they're workmanlike. They're just basic, simple, and they're for working fast. So we don't want tail vices. We don't want fancy benches. We don't fancy bench tops that are polished. We just want to get work done. So those are the basic things that we look at for workbenches. If you have any questions, you can leave comments below or on our blog, or send us an email, and we would be happy to talk about that. But don't fuss, don't make it crazy, just make it strong and rugged. That's all you need.